It is an all-out war. That's how Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan describes an invasion of the Golan Heights and the east bank of the Suez by Syria and Egypt.
October 1973. Egypt, in an effort to reclaim territories taken from it in the Six-Day War of 1967, launched an attack on Israeli fortifications along the Suez Canal. They found support in King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, who promised Egypt $200 million towards the effort. The Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries announced a 5% increase on oil prices per month in order to pressure America, an Israeli ally, to stay out of the fight. U.S. President Nixon was warned of a possibility of a total oil embargo from the Saudis if he continued to support their enemy. The next day, Nixon dropped his request to Congress for $850 million to support Israel instead of a $2.2 billion request. Faisal was infuriated and retroactively followed through on his threat for an embargo. Oil shipments from the Middle East to the U.S. ceased immediately. By the time the embargo was lifted 6 months later, oil prices had already fallen by over 300% globally, a price to be paid by the citizen.
We don't know how short we're going to be on gasoline for the car or fuel for the furnace. All we know is we're going to be short and we'll have to get by on less.
The U.S. had become vitally reliant on Arab oil. It was cheaper than coal and could be imported more readily, until it couldn't. By 1972, 83% of oil imported to the U.S. came from the Middle East. Meanwhile, coal for energy production had all but ceased in comparison. The price of a barrel of oil rose from $3 U.S. to $12 by 1974. Inflation spiraled and prices continued to rise for the rest of the 70s. As a result, 90% of U.S. gas stations stopped selling gasoline to the public on Saturday nights and Sundays. Motorists lined up to fill their tanks and cans, exacerbating the shortage as gas stations simply ran out of supply. AAA reported that in the last week of February 1974, 20% of American gas stations had no gas to speak of. Some states implemented an odd-even rationing system. On odd-number days, only vehicles with a license plate ending in an odd number could purchase gas, and even-numbered plates on even-numbered days. Other states implemented a flag system, green for unrestricted sale, yellow for sale to commercial trucks, and red for a total restriction. Steadily, Americans adjusted. Inflated gas prices became the new normal. Until Iran was in a full civil war. 37,000 Iranian oil refinery workers went on strike. Oil production fell from 6 million to 1.5 million barrels per day. The Iranian Navy was called in to man the facilities and avoid an all-out deconstruction of Iran's oil industry. The next year, war broke out following an Iraqi invasion. 500,000 men, women, and children were killed, and global oil production fell another 7%. Panic spiked again, with an average of 150 million barrels of oil wasted each day by American panic buyers idling outside gas stations, waiting to purchase gasoline. Gas rationing returned, production dwindled, and prices continued to rise.
I'm in a line 2 hours in, I can't get gas. This is baloney.
Americans were in a full-blown panic. Compared to Europe and much of the rest of the world, America was fatally dependent on automobiles. They knew the days of cheap gas were over, and they had to adapt fast. Gas-guzzling American cars from Detroit were taking food off their tables, but in the midst of despair and panic and bankruptcy, hope emerged from across the ocean. Japanese manufacturers like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan flooded the American market. Americans ditched their muscle cars in exchange for the Japanese Matchbox and the fuel economy that came with it. And none stole the hearts, minds, and wallets of the U.S. quite like
the 1979 Toyota Corolla two-door sedan, the lowest-priced Toyota.
You got a Toyota.
The Corolla is a combination of engineering, functional styling, and
the Toyota Corolla. Born in 1966, the Corolla was made with few things in mind: bulletproof reliability, excellent fuel economy, and consumer availability. It was the perfect solution to an impossible problem. Sales exploded across the U.S. Toyota sold nearly 400,000 units in the first half of the 1970s and another 900,000 before 1980. Now, it is the best-selling name in automobiles, overtaking the Volkswagen Beetle in 1997. The most sold car in the U.S. in 1970, the Ford Galaxy, was earning 8 to 12 miles per gallon in mixed driving. A Corolla of the same year was pushing 30. The market shifted overnight. Americans, once on the verge of total collapse, had found hope. Today, we face a crisis not unlike that of the 1970s and 80s. American foreign policy is once again failing the American people. Massive corporations line their pockets at our expense. Gas prices continue to rise. The panic, fear, and hopelessness that gripped us before has again reared its ugly head as we struggle on a national and global scale to fill our cars and put food on our tables. But back then, we did not fail. We turned to ingenuity to build ourselves a solution with nuts and bolts and hope. And we found our way back up despite it all. As we implement new forms of energy production and new ways to make our lives and our cars better, we are bound to find hope in the next shadowy corner over from where we found it before. We will never give up. We will find our answer. We will never lose